JamesAllen.com is the online destination to easily design a customized engagement ring and save up to 50% compared to traditional stores. You pick a diamond, whether it's lab-created or earth-created, James Allen has over 200,000 conflict-free stones. Then you pick your ring setting and metal. And if you need some help, they have real-time diamond consultations available, where an expert can walk you through it all. Get 25% off your order at JamesAllen.com, code podcast. That's JamesAllen.com, code podcast.
Imagine the softest sheets you've ever felt. Now imagine them getting even softer over time. I'm here to tell you about Boll & Branch sheets. In a recent customer survey, 96% replied that Boll & Branch sheets get softer with every wash. They're made from the rarest organic cotton and designed to get even softer over time. Try their sheets with a 30-night guarantee plus 15% off your first order with code Odyssey. So head to BOLL and branch.com today. Exclusions apply. See site for details.
This is Kansas State's Felix Enyedike Uzama, and you're listening to the PowerCat Podcast on the 24/7 Sports Podcast Network. Make sure you're subscribing to this show on your favorite podcast provider.
Welcome to another edition of the PowerCat Questions Podcast. Tim Fitzgerald, Zach Carlson, Cole Carmody, together in the GPC studio. Ryan Gilbert is on an extended family vacation. He's in a station wagon somewhere heading to Wally World. That's my prediction. I think they're going to end up at Wally World. And Cole, you know what happens when they get to Wally World.
The park's not open.
Sorry, folks. Park's closed. Moose out front. Sure told you so. That's what's going to happen to the Gilbert family vacation. But I hope there is a hot woman in a sports car tormenting his would-be stepfather on this trip, right?
Yes, and the dog pees on the sandwiches.
Well, he would still eat that because pea's organic, because he's weird.
I should watch this movie apparently, or maybe I shouldn't watch it.
Let's just hope no aunts died on the trip.
Yeah. Just don't tie anyone to the bumper. If you're going to tie anyone to the bumper, make it the Fridge wholesale. Oh my gosh, the Fridge wholesale liquor. I think I just had a little stroke. Just a little one.
Are they contagious?
Are you previewing our college game day question that we may or may not have?
Are we going to have it? Do I have to answer this Corso? Because I just did a Corso.
That's exactly right.
Hey, stop into the fridge. Now, I'm not a wine drinker. I do like to wine, but not actually drink wine. Those are two separate activities. I'm not a wine person. I'm into the more cultured things like bourbon and vodka. Not this stuffy foo-foo stuff wine, but this wine actually intrigues me because it's amazing packaging, and I hope the packaging equals the quality of this Chardonnay from the Kings of Prohibition. Awesome packaging, cool name. It's wine. Stop into the fridge, ask them, hey, is the Kings of Prohibition Chardonnay any good? And they will be totally honest with you. They'll tell you whatever is the truth, and then if they say no, they'll upsell you to something more expensive because they're professionals at the Fridge Wholesale Liquor. At the corner of this and that in the town in which we live, and this is the PowerCat Questions Podcast. We take the questions from our subscribers at GoPowerCat on the incredible message board Wabash Station. Been kind of fun lately. Really kind of hopping a little bit. And then we filter through those, or Zach does, and we come up with the best of the best that Zach thinks is best. And we answer them on this podcast. Sometimes we answer them thoroughly. Other times I go on tangents. And we will probably be a little bit shorter today because we don't have Ryan Gilbert, who just will not shut up on this podcast.
90% of the airwaves are dominated by Ryan when he's here.
Right. He is the Howard Stern of Go PowerCat. Like, I'll be doing a daily delivery. I'll be recording it. And he'll just show up behind me like, hey, need help? And I'm like, dude, what are you doing in my house? When did you get here? He's just everywhere. But he's not here, which is kind of weird. Let's get going. Questions? Cole, go.
First question comes from I Like Pickles Cat.
Pickles!
Will the rest of spooky season be more spooky for the Cats or for their opponents?
One of the things I love about Kansas State having homecoming fall, the last Saturday home game of October every year. It combines homecoming with Halloween. I like it. And I dress up as a slutty sports writer every year and go to the game. Plunging neckline for all to see. Look, these next 3 weeks, spooky season or college football season, are huge. Huge, which doesn't mean you can cash it in the next 3 weeks, but it just intrigues me, guys, as we recall what we said before the season started, what we thought would be the tough stretches. We did identify this as a tough stretch, but not starting with TCU. Starting with Oklahoma State and running through Baylor. That was the 3-game stretch we talked about. TCU now has proven they are a contender. They're tied with K-State at the top of the conference. TCU, home games in Oklahoma State and Texas. This is a brutal stretch. And, oh, yeah, you still have Baylor in the next game, but I don't know what Baylor's doing right now. You lose at West Virginia. Speaking of which, K-State still gets to go there, and then they play Kansas. Every game's up in the air in this conference. It's a blast. The whole conference is spooky season. You just can't get a grasp on who's good and who's not. But if K-State wants to be good, they've got some games here to pile up where they can prove it and take control of this.
I think Oklahoma State's already had their spooky scare outside of K-State.
How did they blow that game?
I don't know how they blew that. That's pretty spooky for them. So I think K-State can beat them, and they're definitely – it's more spooky for the opponent there.
Every game is winnable.
For TCU, I think you can win that game. I mean, TCU was out of it for the first half. I mean, you can look at Oklahoma State and TCU. You can watch the first half and say, wow, TCU looks really beatable. And then you can watch the second half and say, wow, Oklahoma State looks really beatable. So I think the next 2 games, I think that you can easily say, yeah, K-State can at the very least compete. Can they close out a game unlike Oklahoma State? Or can they maybe make a comeback where they need to against a team like TCU?
Cole. TCU, Oklahoma State, Kansas State, Texas are probably the 4 best teams right now in this conference. Which of those teams looks unbeatable against the worst teams in the conference?
Well, the answer has to be K-State because they're 3-0 against them.
That's probably true. But they all, I mean, you look back at the start of the season, as I said, we thought the start of the season would be brutal. Oklahoma stinks. Iowa State is down. Texas Tech was probably the best opponent of the 3, even though it was the least close game. That makes it the least closest game. And it was in Manhattan. I'm just amazed at how good this conference is. Nobody can take a week off. Texas played at home against Iowa State and should have lost last week. It's just insane.
What makes this fun is the fact that K-State could finish the season 8-4, or they could finish the season 11-1, and I don't think anybody would be shocked.
I'd be shocked at 11-1 just because of what we said. But you're right. At this point, K-State, you just don't know what to bet on. I mean, I'm not saying this could happen, but you could go into a 3-week nosedive here that puts everything in doubt and gets you to 5-4, and then you're wondering, who are we going to beat to get to a bowl game because we can't beat these teams, and we barely are beating the bottom of the conference. It's just amazing how competitive it is and how things for a season can turn, not in a game, in a half. Oklahoma State riding high, thinking playoffs, probably thought it at halftime, and boom, they gave it up. I still don't know how they lost. I think their offensive play calling played a big role in the loss. They did not play complementary football in any way. They were doing silly things with the ball, not running the clock. The clock becomes your enemy as much as the opponent, and they let TCU have enough time to tie it and get it to overtime.
Of the 3 next coaches that K-State plays, if you were to put K-State, I would say talent-wise up against all of them, top-tier talent versus top-tier talent, K-State is on par with these next 3 opponents. Now, K-State's probably better in some ways, and the opponents are also better in some ways. But overall, I think if you just compare straight rosters, K-State is just as talented as each of these next 3 teams they're going to play. So what does the X factor come down to? The X factor comes down to coaching. Who do you trust more, Chris Klieman or Sonny Dykes? I'm not ready to say that I'm ready to trust Sonny Dykes. No. So I give K-State the advantage in that game. Who do you trust more, Chris Klieman or Mike Gundy? Well, traditional thinking says probably Mike Gundy, considering Chris Kleiman hasn't beat him. And then you go on to Texas. Who do you trust more, Chris Kleiman or Steve Sarkisian? I'm not even going to entertain the idea that I trust Sark more than Chris Kleiman. So I think K-State has a legitimate chance to win 2 out of these next 3 games. And if they win against TCU, they might even be favorites against Oklahoma State.
What's incredible, again, is the fact that Oklahoma State lost to TCU, plays Texas this weekend, could lose again, then come to Manhattan and win. I mean, nothing seems to be linked week to week. No results of games seem to impact the next week. And it's in some ways it's always that way, but in the Big 12 this year, Chris Kleiman's right. Every week is a season you've got to survive. And I think the advantage here for Kansas State is having a veteran quarterback who has been in a lot of close games, been on the wrong side of it, but probably understands how to win these games. And we've seen it in a couple of opportunities here where K-State played close games. As long as they don't sleepwalk into a game like Tulane again, they're going to be fine. But I said this on my walk and talk. Adrian Martinez thinks they're close to playing their best game. Guys, I don't think they've even come close to playing their best game. You can look at Oklahoma, but then now that I've seen more of Oklahoma, I question the defense a little bit in that game. You can look at Iowa State, but you can also question the offense after Iowa State. I don't think they've come close to putting it together. If they put together an offense, defense, and special teams game, they're going to rout one of these 3 opponents, which will send shockwaves through college football.
You mentioned the long in the tooth quarterback. That was what this next question comes from Big Sam. Are people, the Go PowerCat staff, being a bit optimistic about K-State airing it out under Adrian Martinez based upon the Iowa State game? I would note the 2 huge pass plays came about on some iffy heaves that were not works of art, to say the least.
They weren't. But he did take advantage of them. I mean, he got the ball out there and down there. That's what happens quite a bit when you got a quarterback who can move around and extend plays. But those 2 passes did skew the stats and made it an unfair representation of the passing game because that racked up such huge yardage for those 2 plays.
Have you seen Adrian Martinez? Maybe not with your own eyes, but have you seen numbers that say Adrian Martinez can throw the football?
Yeah, he can throw the football. It's just depending on what they want to do with it.
I have no doubt that this team can move the ball against defenses that, let's be honest, Iowa State might have the best defense in the Big 12.
They might. Yep. I agree.
They're going to have a chance against TCU. If you go back and you watch that TCU-Oklahoma State game, Oklahoma State was in the red zone. I want to say almost every single drive in the first half. They came away with, 4 field goals? It was something ridiculous like that. K-State is going to be able to move the ball against TCU. Right. And, yes, I fully believe that this bye week was as much of a bye week for the offensive staff as it was for the players. They will come out and they will look so much more sharp simply because now they know this is what we're good at. Let's improve what maybe we're lacking. And if they don't do that, then we'll know that there still needs to be some work on that offensive side of things. But if they come out and they air the ball out and they look a little bit more sharp, we'll know that's what they focused on. And if you can do something really well, like running the football with your quarterback, and then if they can pick up the slack with the passing game, it's going to make them really hard to stop.
Zach, is saying that Kansas State can't pass because of Adrian Martinez giving a completely unjustified pass to the receivers. I feel like you can't just let the receivers off the hook for the passing game struggles.
Yeah, there's definitely been some drop balls, but I think, answering the question here, I think, yes, you can look at the stats of Iowa State and say, yeah, those 2 deep balls, those skewed the stats a bit. There weren't as many yards as what the box score says. But what those passes did, it shows that it exists in the game plan. It gives you the opportunity to throw those balls, and it presents itself the threat to the defense that they have to cover it. So I think that it's easy to be optimistic on the chances, not necessarily executing on those chances. I think that, yeah, you can look at the wide receivers and say, hey, you need to step up, you need to get more open, you need to catch balls, you need to be there for the catch. But also, I think that just opening up the playbook a little bit, throwing it deep like you did at Iowa State on those 2 balls, I think it kind of shows a little bit more of what the offense can do.
And the bottom line is this. Tyler Lockett's not walking through that door, folks. Chris Harper is not coming in and putting on number 3 and getting out there and playing receiver. You're not going to have these deep threats that are able to just run past the secondary. K-State has to work with what they have at the receiver position. So if you're a fan who's complaining about K-State not throwing the ball down the field, well, maybe understand that is going to happen once or twice a game like it did against Iowa State. The reason it's going to happen once or twice a game against Iowa State is because this group of receivers it's not their game. That's just not their game. Cade Warner is not going to run past anybody. I love Cade Warner, but he's not going to be able to just run past anybody. Phillip Brooks is going to be able to sit in a zone and catch a ball for 12 yards. Malik Knowles is going to be able to run a slant route, but they're not going to run past guys because that's not their game. And quite honestly, that's nobody's fault but the coaching staff for not being able to get a deep threat in here and just let Adrian rip it loose like Kleiman talked about on Tuesday. But yeah, I mean, I'm not worried about the passing game. I think it'll be different. But there'll be a lot of 10-yard, 12-yard throws. K-State will matriculate the ball down the field. It will look more like an NFL-style offense than people are used to, but I think that they'll be fine on the throwing.
They're going to have to be more consistent with their ability to throw the ball. And again, it goes back to what I said earlier in the year. I'm not looking for those long bombs. I'm just looking for 15, 20 yards down the field where you keep safeties back away from the running game. And that's really what they need to get effective at.
Yep. Next question comes from GT Cat. Is Austin Moore the modern-day Jonathan Truman?
I had never thought about it, but reading the question, I was like, I think that's the comparison.
Yeah, Jonathan Truman was more physical, more an inside middle guy, but yeah, you can also find other linebackers that have emerged. It's just incredible to me how
Ryan
far.
Mueller? Well, he wasn't a
defensive end.
Defensive end.
I mean, Ian Campbell was a walk-on defensive end. Yeah, it's crazy that it takes a while for some of these kids from smaller Kansas towns to catch up physically. But boy, when he caught up, he understands the game so well that he compensates for so much. He's really impressive. He's just so sound in what he does. You can't take him off the field.
If I would have told you, Fitz, that Austin Moore would have been the leading tackler going into the bye week, what do you think K-State's record would be? I would have said like 3-4.
Yeah.
Because I would have thought Daniel Green would have been hurt and a bunch of things would have gone wrong. Yeah.
They were that bad. They had an extra loss.
Oh, yeah. 3-3. Yeah. Same thing. I'm shocked that Austin Moore, quite honestly, is played at the level he was. I mean, we asked Chris Kleiman about it. He said, this is what I expected. I don't know if they really expected this because I don't think they would have brought in Brandon Jennings and Will Honas if they expected Austin Moore to be this good. But the fact that he has basically he's covered their ass. He has covered the coaching staff's ass and been a dude. Because if he would have not have been a dude, the defense looks a lot different.
I agree. I totally agree. I mean, he just kind of ties everything together in a way that no one else on the roster can in terms of the front to the back of the defense. And he's been really effective. He's fun to watch. If you just watch him, he just beats guys to the spot. Like a lineman will try to square him up and take him out, and he just gets around him.
He's slippery.
Exactly.
Next question comes from Momo Cat.
Momo.
Knock on wood.
That's not wood, bud, but all right.
Like composite wood. Yeah. I don't know what that is.
If K-State makes it to the Big 12 championship, who do you want to play?
Alabama in the Big 12 championship. That make a statement right there.
Can I say KU?
Oh my gosh, that would. It
doesn't count though.
That'd be awful. I can't take the stress of that. I don't care. I'd prefer not Oklahoma or Texas. I think it'd be cool if it was TCU. I think it'd be cool if we had back-to-back seasons in the Big 12 with no OU in Texas, and yet 4 different schools played in the title game. I think that'd be kind of neat. It'd make a statement about what this conference is about to become. Lacking some of those big national draws, but incredible football. So, yeah, I really don't care. I'd prefer it not to be Texas. That's just it. It's not going to be Oklahoma.
If K-State beats Texas, Texas ain't making the Big 12 championship.
Probably not.
If K-State can lose to TCU, beat Oklahoma State, beat Texas, and play TCU in the championship game. I honestly think if you were to make, I don't know what the live odds are, but if K-State beats TCU on Saturday, they have to be
They've got to be the
favorite.
Yeah, they've got to be in the driver's seat at that point.
Like, I mean,
They will, but I caution everyone, we won't even be halfway through the Big 12 schedule at that point. We'll be 4 out of 9 down. And in this conference, that could mean you're 4 and 5 at the end of the year. That's how crazy this conference is. So, yeah, I mean, if they win the next 2, the odds are in their favor greatly to be there. I just kind of hope it's another opportunity for the Big 12 to say, hey, we play good football completely detached from these 2 brands that everyone loves because of brand. Oklahoma has been a really good program for years, but all Texas has is a brand. They have stunk more consistently than been good. So they haven't really delivered much to the conference other than a brand that people love to watch lose a lot. And honestly, I think when they go in the SEC, Texas is going to get lost in the wash. I think some of that passion and hatred for Texas will disappear. They'll be out of the hair of everyone else in Texas except for A&M. So I'm just fascinated about where this all leads in 10, 15 years.
I'm going to ask you guys this.
He's going to ask us something.
We haven't really talked about this.
Oh.
But I want to bring this up.
We haven't given our picks yet either. But
okay, well, true. Well, before we make our picks,
okay.
I think you talk about the Big 12 championship, and if K-State makes it to the Big 12 championship, there's going to be a lot of folks that say, "Oh, well, the Big 12, one of the people playing in the Big 12 championship game lost to Tulane."
Yeah,
right. Well, that Tulane Green Wave team is now number 25 in the country.
Right.
Does that loss, like at this point, are we almost looking at that as a good thing for this football team because we realize now that Tulane was a pretty damn good team.
I don't think it's a good thing, but it's helpful that they're good.
I just don't know if K-State is in the position they are if they win that game.
Yeah, that's the intriguing X factor. Do they have a game like that against Iowa State if it's not Tulane? Are they 5-1 but with a conference loss? So in a weird way, yeah, I've said this before, that losing to Tulane is good if you're going to lose a game because now you're unbeaten in the conference. I think Tulane's pretty good, but let's not forget that they too turned around and lost to someone they should have beaten in losing to Southern Miss. But they are a pretty darn good football program, and they might be. They're in the same position as Kansas State in the American. They've got some pretty good programs, and UCF and Cincinnati nipping at their heels. But right now they're sitting atop the standings. I would never have thought that game would have such meaning, as we head down the season. But it does look pretty important. It certainly looks important for Tulane to have that win. They might have a win over the Big 12 champion. That's pretty cool for them. But, yeah, it damages K-State's resume.
Am I crazy for saying that for the team I'd pick for Big 12 championship would be TCU?
No, because that's who I would pick. I don't want to play Oklahoma State.
Because if you going into this week, it's easy to say, but you watch them against Oklahoma State, that first half, TCU's beatable. And if K-State's defense is as good as they are, the second half TCU doesn't happen.
Right.
Or it shouldn't happen. So I think that K-State, if they go down and if they happen to lose this weekend, I think that puts a chip on their shoulders and you can go back and, go get them the second time. But if you beat TCU, I think that you have that increased confidence. TCU will have the chip on their shoulder if they're playing K-State after they lost to them this season. But I think that's a situation where I think K-State, if they win the first one, I think they can win a second one.
That's why I'll say this. Sonny Dykes and Max Duggan or Spencer Sanders and Mike Gundy. That's your answer. Max Duggan and Sonny Dykes 100% of the time and twice on Sundays.
I'm still not sold on them. I'm just not. I'm not at all sold on them.
They're going to buy into the hype this week. I'm calling it right now. They're buying into the hype. Their fans storm the field. Oh, this is the definition of a letdown game.
Yeah.
Could be.
So keep that in mind as you watch the game on Saturday.
And they're wearing their all blacks with a little purple. They wear them all the time.
Muy pequeño.
I liked last week's with the red. I think that's the coolest thing that they do.
Yeah.
That anybody does.
Just add it as a school color. It's blood red.
Yeah, it technically is.
Add it. The horned frogs shooting out their eyes.
It's the poison coming from the... Yeah.
They're killer frogs.
Last question of the first half of the podcast.
The killer frogs growl. I'm a frog.
I think they go ribbit.
Okay.
Comes from Crunch Cat Supreme. Who should K-State invite as the guest picker when they host Oklahoma State on College Game Day next Saturday? A, Eric Stonestreet. B, Kurt Warner. C, Bill Snyder. D, Sylvester Stallone. Or E, other.
Those are good choices. I can see them going with Coach Snyder. I had never really thought of that.
I hadn't either.
That's an interesting choice. I have it on good authority that if A was asked, he would propose either Darren Sproles or Jordy Nelson. I think Jordy's probably the choice. I mean, he's right here. He's in town.
It's the best for the university, probably.
Yeah.
Although seeing Darren come back would be pretty dang cool.
I think we can write off the whole Stallone thing.
Sylvester Stallone.
What, you don't think he's going to come on to promote
Tulsa King?
Tulsa King?
By the way, that show looks amazing. I just want to say that. It's
I don't
Paramount
know if you're
Plus.
keeping up with the family gossip here, but there's a divorce going on that will detach this segment of the family from the Stallones. So I don't think it'll happen. Kurt Warner's an interesting choice, though.
I think it could be Kurt Warner. I really do.
It'd be kind of disappointing because it doesn't really represent K-State necessarily. His son's on the team, but yeah, I don't know. I say, you know.
You don't think that Stone Street would be the odds-on favorite if it is announced?
But he's already done it before.
And I think he wouldn't mind the spotlight being on someone else. I think he's kind of backed up a little bit, if you notice. He's not as out there as he was, which would get tiresome.
Except for Randy Reed. Give Randy a ring. You don't know what I'm talking about. It's Andy Reid's
Dressed up
brother.
as Andy Reid.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I know.
But Jordy Nelson would be interesting. I just it doesn't move the needle with Coach Snyder, Jordy Nelson, and Kurt Warner. To me, it doesn't really move the needle as far as entertainment goes. I mean, if you get Darren on there, I think it would be interesting because he is what people know of as K-State football nationally, I feel like.
Jordy Nelson would be the best because he's friends with Pat.
That is a good point.
There you go.
Oh, that's a very valid point. That is exactly the direction they would go.
It would be him.
Of course, we could also go with the noted Kansas State football fan and Zach Carlson's favorite country artist of all time.
Ooh, Kane Brown.
Kane Brown. We have no idea why he's a K-State football fan, but he has said it.
Where would they set up game day?
We didn't talk to anybody about this, did we?
No. Where would they?
It can't be Aggieville.
They've talked about setting it up on the lawn in front of Anderson, but that would require like a night game. I mean, even if it's a 2:30 game, nobody wants to go out there, hang out, and then miss out on tailgating.
Hear me out.
I will because your mic's on.
6-day window announced.
Mm-hmm.
You could theoretically get selected for game day and then get selected for the night game
No, sure.
right after that.
Yeah.
And you have Kirk Herbstreit and Chris Fowler on the
I was hoping someone on the message board would do the dirty work and do the research about what else
Somebody has.
they're considering, and if it's baseball or I don't even know. Does ESPN even have baseball?
No.
No, it's all Fox at this point in the
So
postseason.
maybe it's Fox holding it up because of baseball. With
I bet
the
you it's
6-day pick, I don't think Fox is going to take this game for big noon in terms of their pregame show.
I think it's ESPN actually this time.
Okay.
I think there's more ESPN slots because Fox has Big Noon and then there's baseball, so they have less slots anyway. There's no need for them to hold it up, in my opinion.
All
They
I
already
know
chose this week.
is if you have game day in Manhattan, Kansas during the day, followed by an extended period for participation of drinking activities on a Halloween weekend leading up to a night game at the Bill, I think there'd be chaos.
It'd be beautiful chaos.
But the logistics would be great at Anderson.
It'd look beautiful.
Multiple parking garages, parking lots.
It'd look beautiful.
Easy to get there.
Yeah, I agree. I think it'd be really cool, and you know what? I mean, it would show the beauty of the K-State campus. It really would, because it is a nice campus. You just can't drive through it anymore, or you have to physically get out of your car and walk. And at least Anderson looks really cool.
R.I.P. to that grass, though. If you have all that
it'll be
stuff
late.
set up there.
It'll be late October.
It's fine.
It's going to be RP'd anyhow. It doesn't have much time. It's all going to die.
Spooky season.
So we all think it's K-State and TCU, and game day will be here next week. That's what we're all going with.
We are assuming a lot.
You know what happens when you assume?
You go to break. And that's it for the first half of the PowerCat Questions podcast. I assume you will be back after the break, because we will, and so will the fridge. The fridge isn't going anywhere. I can't talk today. Jeez.
This is Kansas State's Cooper Beebe. The leaders in K-State sports coverage will be right back with more of the PowerCat podcast.
JamesAllen.com is the online destination to easily design a customized engagement ring and save up to 50% compared to traditional stores. You pick a diamond, whether it's lab-created or earth-created. James Allen has over 200,000 conflict-free stones. Then you pick your ring setting and metal. And if you need some help, they have real-time diamond consultations available, where an expert can walk you through it all. Get 25% off your order at JamesAllen.com code podcast. That's JamesAllen.com code podcast.
My days working, taking care of my little ones can be a lot. I checked out Care.com and it was so easy for me to find local, experienced, and background check sitters. Finding our babysitter was way more affordable than I thought. Care.com makes it super easy. Search for qualified candidates. You can view their profiles, read reviews and ratings, check their availability, send messages directly, get the help that you need. Care.com should be every person's go-to.
This is Kansas State's Daniel Green, and welcome back to the PowerCat podcast on the 24/7 Sports Podcast Network.
Welcome back to the PowerCat Questions podcast. 3 guys and 4 microphones. One is off because we have no Ryan Gilbert. Sadness has filled the airwaves. Are there airwaves on the podcast? I don't know. Tim Fitzgerald, Zach Carlson, Cole Carmody. There you go. You got the Guild treatment there.
Thank you.
Midnight? No midnight?
Oh, yeah. Midnight. Still a pretty cool nickname.
Papa.
He's Papa Midnight? Ooh, that's a good rap name.
Oh, Papa John.
Oh, Papa John Midnight.
I don't think either one of those two things go with each other.
No, and if you there's a rumor on the street that he actually is Papa John's clone.
But I will say this.
Illegitimate child. Come on, get it right.
We do not have any relationship with each other. Any comments that are made by Mr. Papa are not, I do not affiliate it. I am more in line with the current Papa John spokesperson, Shaquille O'Neal, than I am the former Papa John's spokesperson.
Shakaroni guy, huh?
Interesting. Daphne didn't agree with that at all.
The fridge is better than Papa John's.
The fridge is delicious, and I forgot to mention them. Thank you for steering me right back into it. The Fridge Wholesale Liquor is our sponsor. They've been doing it. I've lost track how many years. It's just, it's really cool. Make sure you stop into the fridge, check out the products from our other sponsors that sponsor the Friday walkthrough, which is, of course, the Part-Time Beverage Company out of Tulsa, Oklahoma. Go get you some. That's what I say. Some, I'm just totally spacing off now.
Club Special
Thank
in
you.
Cape Cod.
Thank you. God, Lord.
Sitting right there.
I can't see it because the chair's in my way. That's what happened is I looked and the chair was in the way, and then I'm like, ugh. And now, your questions from Wabash Station. Take it away, Cole.
The first question of the second half comes from Go Uper Cat. K-State basketball was picked to finish dead last in the Big 12 preseason poll. He says, I want to be more optimistic, but is it unrealistic to have higher expectations for a brand new staff and essentially a new roster?
Yeah. I mean, what? They weren't good last year, but, I mean, they're rebuilding a program that was a disaster. It was a disaster. They ran off most of the roster, and you could make an argument they're better for it, even though they were picked last. Right? Am I crazy there? Maybe there's a guy or two they could have kept that would help this team, but I don't know. I mean,
I don't think so.
Only the equation only comes to pass if they don't have a full roster. And you can say, well, Logan Landers would at least been a body, or Sultan Miguel would at least play defense, or something like that. But for the most part, they improved this program, but it's just a giant unknown. I don't blame anyone for voting K-State last. Why wouldn't you vote K-State last? And it's not saying that because K-State was voted 10th in this conference that they're awful. It's just meaning they're probably going into the season the worst team in the conference. They still could be a really good team. We talk about football being competitive. Holy cow, basketball in this conference is nuts.
We have no idea how good this team is going to be, simply because A, there's been no media day, B, there's been nobody who's seen any of these guys play besides the 13 players that are on that roster and about the 52 support staff that they have. Other than that, nobody knows how good this team's going to be. But I will say this. You can be optimistic because guess what? All you have to do is look at those guys and say they are better athletes than the guys that were going to hear before. That is a credit to the strength staff. That's a credit to the coaches. And quite honestly, it wasn't that hard to be much better than the guys that were in here last year.
It wasn't.
Yeah, I don't think it's unrealistic to have higher expectations, but like you guys have said, who wouldn't pick K-State last this year? It makes sense. And quite frankly, I wouldn't be surprised if they finished last still anyway. Because we just don't know.
We don't know, and if they do, so what?
Right.
There's a future here. There was no future the last few years for K-State basketball, and they were still finishing around last. I'm very optimistic about the program going forward. I think they've added some really nice pieces. They're recruiting at a higher level than we've seen in a very long time. I will give them a pass this year. Do I want them to look awful? No. Do I expect them to play hard? Yeah, and I'm not even going to make a chart about it. I expect them to be competitive, put it out there, play for the colors, play for the brand, and we'll see what happens.
You want to know why they'll be better this year, Fitz?
Why?
Because they have seniors on this team. They have multiple guys who have played years and years of major college basketball. There was none of that last year. There was never...
Except for the years they won Big 12 titles, there was never experience on the roster because there was such an alarming turnover. They had a high turnover before the transfer portal, but measured against transfer portal expectations, it was still a high turnover. It was crazy. I appreciate that he wiped the slate clean. Would I have kept a guy or two? Probably, but I appreciate that he said, you know what, you two, I'm keeping you. Everyone else can go, where.
You know what? I'm gonna say something maybe kind of controversial, but after everything that's happened this offseason, I'm almost kind of glad that Nigel Pack is not on this team because I just don't know if he fits into what they're building. And that's nothing against Nigel because he was always a very nice young man whenever we had a chance to talk to him. But how they're building this team, Marquise Noel is the shortest player on the team.
No.
Obviously.
He's maybe the shortest player on the women's team, too.
Every single player other than that is over 6'2".
Fairly close.
Every single player other than that is over 6'2". Nigel Pack was not 6'2".
No.
They have a million guys who are just tall and lengthy and freaky athletic.
Yeah, if you haven't seen these guys and just out and about or at an event, it's amazing the size and length involved here. They just look different than what K-State basketballs look like in a long time. Now, let me ask you this: who has a better season? Marquise Noel or Nigel Pack?
Probably Nigel. I just don't think that.
I think it's gonna blow up in Miami. It's gonna be a disaster.
Yeah, I think he'll get his. I don't know if Miami will be better than K-State.
Right. I think K-State can be the better team than Miami, but I still think Nigel probably puts up the better numbers.
He'll get his. I mean, he's a great shooter. He can create his own shot. But I mean, if you want to go statistically, probably Nigel, but again, I don't think Marquise Noel is going to have to do it all like Nigel Pack is probably going to have to do
I think Nigel will struggle like Marquise did last year, not being the guy. And you saw Marquise have to adjust to that. He was still trying to be the guy when he wasn't the guy. And I don't think there's any way that he's going to be the guy in Miami. I don't think his teammates will let him. I think their point will not be to win basketball games, but to prove that he's overpaid.
That could happen.
NIL is a wild frontier, and it could blow up on people.
Speaking of wins and losses, Cole Cats 3, first of all, amazing name. Let me just say.
It's COAL.
Yeah, and every time I post something, he comments Common Cole W, so I'm going to say Common Cole W back to him because I think his name is Cole. Either way, do you think it is a reasonable take to think that K-State basketball can go undefeated in non-conference play?
What a horrible question. No, I'm sorry, what was the question?
Can K-State go undefeated in non-conference play?
I doubt it.
I'm going to say no.
No, I mean, they got some
They play at Cal.
Cal is terrible.
Cal's terrible.
But it's the second game of the year.
Yeah, I mean, they're just going to have a game they lose. Or, Butler.
That's a tough game. But, I mean, okay. I mean, again, I've had these conversations with people before, but with the expectation of Bruce Weber teams was that, you had to have a good non-conference because you didn't play anybody. They actually play some people in this schedule. Mm-hmm. So I guess the real question should be, is it reasonable to think that they should go undefeated against the UTRGVs, the Kansas Cities, and the Abilene Christians of the world? Because to me, that answer should be yes. You should be better than those teams, and I'm going to even throw Wichita State in there because they were not that good last year. You should be able to beat basically any school that is non-Power 5, and quite frankly, Butler was 14-19 last year.
That hurts.
So
yeah, maybe I don't know, but I do think they're going to lose one. You're like, oh crap, they lost. Let's not hope it's not UMKC, but one of those that just
Rhode Island in the Cayman Islands Classic.
Did you know that Rhode Island is not actually an island? Huh? It's crazy.
K-State might have a chance to avenge that football loss against Tulane because they either play Nevada or Tulane in the second game of the Cayman Islands Classic.
You think that's going to really motivate them?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Is that it?
That's it.
Okay. Next question.
I'm not addressing answers to questions by guys named Cole. Go ahead, Cole.
Do you want me to ask a next question then, or are we just going to stop since you're not answering questions from people named Cole?
The question's not actually by you. It's being read by you.
Oh, okay. From Cat Alum 1976, which, by the way, I'm going to assume that he graduated K-State in 1976.
Maybe.
Which basketball player is going to be the biggest surprise this year?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, for an old guy. Let's see here. Who's going to surprise in basketball?
Keontae Johnson.
That's not a surprise. We expect him to be good. You can't pick, you can't just say, oh, who's the best looking guy in the room? And you say Fitz. And they're like, oh, everyone knows that.
But do we expect Keontae Johnson to be good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Unless he has health issues, I do expect him to be good.
How good? All conference level?
Yeah, he could be.
Okay.
Well, if you're 0-18 in the conference, maybe not. But, yeah, I mean, he could get there. He certainly could. I honestly don't know. But I think Naquan Tomlin is going to there's something going on here. The fact they're taking him to Kansas City on Wednesday for Big 12 Media Days, as a guy who hasn't been around this before. I mean, he didn't even play high school basketball. This could be one of the incredible stories of college basketball. And then he goes to junior college and is really good, and he's a 6'10" guard. And that isn't, I want to be a guard. He plays like a guard. So I'm just intrigued by him. And if he really is good to go with Keontae, I'm still a badass Johnson. That's his nickname, by the way. This team could be pretty good. Fun.
I think that the player I'm going to say is Keontae, and I agree with you on Naquan Tomlin. The reason I'm going to say Keontae is because I've talked to some people, most notably Ryan Gilbert, who has the bar set extremely low for Keontae, and I understand that simply because he hasn't played since 2020. But I watch this kid, I look at this kid, and I think this guy is an NBA talent. Another one of those guys is Naquan Tomlin as well, but Keontae Johnson can come in here and can be an all Big 12 player from the jump. If you go back and you look at his highlights again when he was at Florida, he was the best player in the SEC. There's a reason why he was voted SEC Player of the Year. He was a lottery pick before he had this condition. By all means, we've heard he's healthy. That is a guy who K-State fans are going to be shocked at how good he is. I've said this before. I think K-State has not seen an athlete like that at that position since Bill Walker or Michael Beasley. I mean, K-State's had a lot of really good guards. They've had some good big men. But somebody who can do the things that he does, they have not seen somebody like that since Michael Beasley. And true NBA talent, which is what he is. A guy who can go score, a guy who can get rebounds, and a guy who can handle the ball. I think he's going to be an absolute surprise. He's going to be a star. It might take some time, but I think he is going to be the biggest surprise. And you mentioned Naquan Tomlin, another guy that I think has a chance to be really, really good this year is Tyke Green, the transfer from Stony Brook. I mean, this was a guy who put up buckets against KU. He spent time playing in lots of college basketball. He'll have an opportunity to come in immediately and start. The guy looks like he can play linebacker for K-State on the football team. He is absolutely jacked. I think that he's another one of those guys who people might be sleeping on to start the season, but I'm excited for all these guys. And what do they all have in common? They've all had experience playing college basketball. That is going to help this team.
I'm with Fitz. I think the surprise has already happened. It's Tomlin, and the fact that they're taking him to media days, like Fitz says, just says that they believe in this guy. Let's put him out in front of the media. Let's get him out there because, someone that's limited basketball experience at this level is kind of crazy. So I think that's the surprise.
It's amazing how you can go from not ever playing high school basketball to playing a year at JUCO where you redshirt. You just randomly, you feel like, all right, well, he looked good in the park, so let's get him out here at JUCO. He redshirts, plays another year, and then he transfers to another college, plays another year there, and now he's playing Power 5 basketball. To think that in his 4th year of playing organized basketball, he's gone from literally playing on the playground to playing in front of thousands of fans at Bramlage Coliseum. It's remarkable. So, yeah, he'll be fun to watch for sure. The last question of the second half and of the podcast comes from Call Me T22. There's been lots of talk about football scheduling with new members coming in. What will basketball scheduling look like at both 14 and 12? Divisions seem to make a lot more sense for sports like basketball and volleyball. No,
they don't. I mean, it will be intriguing. 14 is a sloppy number to try to schedule around in all sports. It's just a bad number.
Well, I saw that there was a report
if you look at the Big Ten and the SEC, that's probably the model they'd choose. I don't know exactly what their model is, but probably divisions, or something that looks like divisions at least.
John Rothstein came out with a report that said, I believe that K-State was going to, or not just K-State, but the Big 12 was planning on doing next year, every team plays everybody, and then there's specific rivalry games that get played twice.
Basketball, yeah.
So K-State, KU will play twice.
They'll play 18, but yeah, K-State, KU will guaranteed be twice, and then after that, there'll be other 2-game series. It's just not guaranteed.
Right.
And we get that, sterling, brand new rivalry between Iowa State and BYU guaranteed. Big stuff. Yeah, I mean, if they get to 16, it's pretty easy to schedule. I mean, you just look at basketball. If you have a 4-team scheduling pod, which isn't just randomly picked, they're kind of regional. So in this case, it would likely be K-State, KU, Iowa State, Oklahoma State. You play all of them twice. That makes sense. I mean, those are the teams that you have the most in common with. You would play them twice. That gets you 6 games. And, then there's 12 other teams in the conference? 6 plus 12 single games, you're at 18. So it gets pretty easy at 16. Brett Yormark apparently just said at Women's Basketball Media Day in Kansas City that they're planning on have Oklahoma and Texas for the next 2 years, that it's now kind of set in stone.
Yeah.
And the only reason it's set in stone, well, 2 reasons here. I mean, ESPN wants them out early for their ESPN contract, but isn't willing to give Fox anything. I mean, Fox has part ownership of them. They'd be losing Oklahoma and Texas. And the other reason is Oklahoma is in over its head with its financial obligations. It can't pay the exit fee, which is kind of funny to me that they're going to the SEC for the money and they don't have money. I mean, it's kind of sad that they're in this predicament. I think it'll still get worked out. I think eventually ESPN will say, we want them out of here. We don't like this. These new teams are getting scheduled against Oklahoma and Texas and getting the tar beaten out. They're devaluing the OU Texas brand, which would be a huge nightmare for ESPN if they go into a prolonged tailspin at the end of the conference affiliation. But I think it'll get worked out, and they'll give Fox the OU Texas game or something. Here, have a piece of candy. So I'm not sure how it's all going to work out, but I don't want them around anymore. I don't want them around the rest of the season. I wish they could leave right now. They're just tiresome. Now that they can't win football games, they're talking about their value. I mean, who cares? How does it media rights value affect you? But yeah, they'll figure out a way to get 18 in basketball, and at 14 it gets really awkward. Just really, really awkward. Just get rid of them. Just come on, Poverty Sooners, pay your bills. Poverty Sooners. I'm wearing their colors right now too.
That is sure as a bummer. Boomer.
Yeah. Okay. That's it for this edition of the PowerCat Questions podcast, starring Daphne, who we had to cut out a number of times barking because she's more high-strung than someone that said Oklahoma would be better without Lincoln Riley. That's how high-strung she is. Like, she doesn't know what's going on. She's so confused. We'll talk to you next week. Thanks to The Fridge for your ongoing support.
Thank you for listening to the PowerCat Podcast. Make sure you're subscribing to our show at Apple, Spotify, Amazon, or wherever you get your podcasts. PowerCat Podcast. All rights reserved. GoPowerCat.com.
Get in on the action with the world's largest sports book right at your fingertips. Circa Sports Iowa is where the pros play. Enjoy the highest limits, lowest takeouts, competitive betting menus, and the best customer service. Now you can download, fund, and bet like a pro from anywhere in Iowa. Circa Sports Iowa. Sports betting the way it should be. Download your new bookie today. Visit circasports.com for details.